Et bonjour Rinse France, hello Rinse FM. Welcome to one of a very special show. I'm Monique Destruction and I am honored to host Akinola Davies in our studio today. Be very welcome. Thank you for accepting our invitation. We are here gathered today to present and discuss your very first long feature film, My Father's Shadow. In French, the movie is called Un jour avec mon père, and it will be released in the theaters on Wednesday, March the 25th, across the nation. So be sure to get your ticket, go to the screenings, and send us your commentary or what you think about the movie. Worldwide, the film has already been released in the UK. I know you showed it also in Nigeria, in Lagos, but we'll come back to that point in a few moments. And also, everybody, especially Ireland, the US, and some other territories are going to be, the movie is going to be available on the Mubi platform as soon as April the 10th. Before we begin this conversation, I would like to thank the Pact, your French distributor, for making this interview possible effortlessly and gracefully. So thank you very much to Margot and all the team at the Pact. And a very tiny special salute to Alice Labadi for great distribution work over the past few years. Thank you also to Manare Colli and Lucia Serrano, who are entirely responsible for this moment. They are the one who pushed me to produce this conversation and made it happen, basically. So thank you. And finally, eternal gratitude, as always, to the one and only M. Barrett for taking care of all the technical aspects of this interview, sound recording, video direction, broadcasting, you name it. M does it all, so thanks 1,000 times for being here when we need you the most. That being said, let's start this conversation. Akinola, we absolutely don't know each other. So I have to ask, what is your background in the large sense of when and why did you choose cinema?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. Bonjour, I should say properly. Nice to meet you, enchanté. What is my background? Okay, I don't know how long we have for this, but I'll try and distill some thoughts. What is my background? So I born in London, grew up in Nigeria, went to boarding school in the UK, have family in the US, so spent a lot of time between three places. When I was about 15 or 16, I was in boarding school in the countryside in England, and my friend would go home all the time. And one time I went home with him, and first time I ever saw a Bohemian family. His father was an editor, his mother is an artist. He had a brother with severe Down syndrome, so disability. And I just, as someone who grew up in a single parent household, I'd just never seen anything so beautiful before, this kind of family unit. So I wanted to do what his father did. He said his father was an editor, so I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I had ambition maybe before of being an architect or singer or footballer, but I was never good enough to play football or sing. And then fast forward a few years, I studied English language and media studies. I thought maybe I would be a journalist. And then I did a small film course in university. I loved it. Made a terrible film, but I enjoyed the editing. And then, you finish university and you're a bit lost. You don't know what to do. So I worked as a receptionist in a advertising company in London. I would buy stationery and fruit and tea for the office. And it was good money, cash in hand. This is 2008, 2009, around the time of the financial crash. And they didn't renew my contract, so I applied to do a filmmaking workshop, which was 3 months in New York, analog, digital filmmaking. It's like £150. I made a request and they accepted. So wow, I need to raise money to go to New York. I sold everything I had, and my sister still lived in New York, and my brother as well. But my brother lives in the countryside in New York. The week I moved to New York, my sister moves to London. So I have to find an apartment with some friends. But I do this course, and it's the best experience of my life. It's the first time in a sort of academic-ish setup that I felt intelligent, I felt seen, I felt like my ideas were heard. So I loved it. and we had to make films with each other. And at this point, I'm a big Jim Henson Sesame Street fan, and I wanted to make films for children. So I started making these kind of weird, childish films, and everybody on the course loved working on my sets. And the experience in New York was incredible. Then I moved back to London. I used to have really interesting hair, so I got cast to maybe a model, not like a proper model, but just like a catalog model. I didn't get any jobs, but I got one job. And this one job was working with these filmmakers called Tim and Barry. And Tim and Barry are a couple of photographers and filmmakers who document black electronic music in the UK. They in 2009, 2008, 2007, they were already using YouTube as a platform, creating unique content for YouTube, and working with artists such as Skepta, Tiny Temper, Chipmunk, JME, Temper T, so many artists across the UK, Devilman, Lioness, so many incredible black artists doing grime, doing dubstep, doing garage, all forms of black electronic music. So they were shooting a lookbook for Soul to Soul, the guys who did Back to Life. And I said, yes, I'll do it for free. And I went and I worked and I modeled on the shoot, and I just asked them loads of questions the whole time. And by the end of the shoot, I said, I'll work for free. I had a job where I was working in a bar, because after I moved back from New York, I was broke, I was homeless, I had zero money, so I slept on my friend's sofa for 3 months. I worked at American Apparel, and then I met Tim and Barry. So I moved to East London. I worked in this bar for 3 shifts a week to pay my rent, and the rest of the time I was free. So Tim and Barry, the next week, were starting a production called Just Jam. And Just Jam is audio-visual live stream from a club. This is 2010 on Ustream, right? No fiber optic, just cables, They started in this club called The Alibi. And for me, this was an education. This was my film school. I was for the first 2-3 weeks. At this point, I was like 24 years old, 25. First few weeks, I was bashing cables from the router to the DJ booth, sellotape, make sure it's out of the way. I did that for the first 2 weeks, and something happened in the 3rd week where somebody let me hold the camera. And when I held the camera, I never let go of the camera. I would hold the camera for 4 hours, no breaks, like every week, every Wednesday. And my camera work was like very like intentional. It was very like it was almost confrontational, because in that environment where like the club is full, you have to be that. So I did that for the remaining time of Just Jam. Then afterwards, I went to the studio. They said, come 1 day a week. I went every day, and I edited all these videos, these like 4-hour videos, and I cut them into segments, put the ident on. So I learned how to edit. That's how I properly learned how to edit. After this, I was assisting other filmmakers, Simon Owens, Georgia Hudson, Rollo Jackson, Ewan, what's his name? Ewan Spencer, Kieran McGatt, different directors, basically. So I was learning, I was assisting, I was sometimes holding the camera, sometimes...
On what kind of projects? It's art projects, advertising?
Music clips, mostly music clips, mostly like before it became content, sort of like weird documentaries, like short form, like loads of short form music related stuff and music clips. So this was my education. This was me. I assisted Tim and Barry for 6 years. Like I call it an apprenticeship. I was with them. And then sort of after a while, I was very interested in how we create a system to keep all the young people around, to pay all the young people, to give them equity in what we're doing. But I think other people had different ideas. So they said, you should go and do something different. You keep trying to tell everybody what to do, so maybe you should try something else. So effectively, I left Tim and Barry and I worked for Dailymotion. I met Dailymotion through a guy called Mark Etienne, who was a content sort of the manager of Dailymotion. I was trying to get him to buy some turntables for Tim and Barry. And around that time, I should probably say I was DJing. I went to Chicago with Tim and Barry and did a documentary about DJ Rashad, DJ Spin, called I'm Trying to Tell You, where we shot the footwork scene in Chicago. And that trip changed my life as well, because it really made me realize that these kind of stories were super interesting. Rashad had a very big influence on me because he was, Black American, sort of from South Sides of Chicago, and meeting a sort of African who has a British accent. They were very curious as to what I thought about the dancing and the music. And I said, it reminds me a lot of African dance, African drums and stuff like this. So yeah, I got a job with Dailymotion. I was a content manager. Around the same time Just Jam started, I met a guy called Blaze Belville who started Boiler Room. And another friend of mine, Femi Adeyemi, who started NTS Radio. So I used to also shoot clips for NTS and Boiler Room, sort of content stuff when they had a thing with Red Stripe. And so I was kind of around just assisting everybody when it came to music. I started DJing to make a bit of extra money. And then when I got fired from Tim and Barry, I worked as a content manager in Dailymotion for a year and a half.
It was the big years of Dailymotion.
It was the big years of Dailymotion.
They had a studio in Paris too at
exactly.
Approximately
Overdrive,
time.
Infinity.
Exactement, with Techie Latex.
Techie Latex, yeah, at that time. It was a very flourishing period, a very exciting period, if I'm honest, for music and electronic music just in general. And for me, it was great because I was still doing my job in the pub, and then I was assisting, and all the money I just kept, because I had a very minimal lifestyle. My rent was very cheap, so I saved a lot of money. I think over 2.5 years, I saved almost £25,000. And after a while, Dailymotion asked me to be full-time, and I refused because I think a lot of my strength was being my network, being able to be free. So at this point, I realized, okay, wow, like what am I going to do? I haven't made these. I'm not a filmmaker like I tell people, so maybe I should try and make films. So I started using my money to make music clips. I made a video for an artist called Farai, called Lion Warrior. I made a music clip for an artist called Klein. I made a music clip for Nena Cherry. I made a music clip for Blood Orange. Sometimes I'm using my own money in the early stages. Eventually, sometimes artists give me money. But I from the first clip I made, people knew I was somebody who could shoot music clips. So I would just get work and work and work.
Not only shoot, because what you said is that you love to camera operate. Mm-hmm. You're also an editor. Mm-hmm. So you would take in charge all of the production line?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I was basically sort of, guerrilla filmmaking. It was like we have very small money, so I have to pick the team, I have to instruct the team, I have to think of the creative, I have to think of how, when the video is edited, who's going to grade, when the video is graded, how we're going to seed the film to people who can talk about the film, how those people, what sort of network they have, how we're going to promote the film. Like it's everything, but because I've had a background in music, because I've worked in all these different places, I have such a big network everywhere. So, and I think it was very important. I had a good relationship with everyone, so I knew how to exploit the network. As a matter of fact, around that time is the same time I met Man Ray.
That's what I was going to tell you, because all of what you told me about music, video, DJing, black electronic music, London, the US is very Rinse compatible.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. I met Man Ray very fortuitously. I have a guy who's a bit of my mentor. His name is Steve Payton. And one day Steve says to me, "Oh, I see what you're doing with this Just Jam thing. I know these guys, they have a label called Click Click Boom. I'm a partner in Click Click Boom. Do you want to let me know what you think of the music?" And I'm like, oh God, maybe it's going to be really bad. and I listen to the music and I'm like, it's incredible. I'm like, French Fries, Man Ray, Bombonou. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Like, who are these guys? And he's like, oh, you can come to Paris. I'll introduce you to them. So I met these guys. I met Bombonu. I met Manare, like young black guys. I'm like, wow, I was like, you guys should come and do something on Just Jam, And they came. I invited them. They all came at the same time. I met Girls, Louis Chen, Pew Pew, Betty Ben Simon. They came and did a show in London as well. I invited them. I met Teki, came and did a show in London as well. Rashad came and did a show in London as well. Venus X, Aka, Kelela, DJ Assault. Like, all these people came to our little studio in London, and all these other people in music in London making music, Lofa, so many people, Lofa, everyone, you name it, they came to our studio. Skepta, a lot of Grime, Bloodline, Big H, like all these guys came to our studio. So for me, as a middle class kid who came from Nigeria, this was an education, This was like I was at the front line of like so much black electronic music in the UK, and I was trying to connect what was happening in France. I'm trying to connect what's happening in New York. I'm trying to connect what's happening in LA. Because Tim and Barry were very focused on the UK, but because I've traveled and seen the world, I was very focused in like, how do we bring all these things together? How do we find out, oh, okay, they're making Kuduro, Principe in Portugal. Like, how do we bring them into what we're doing? These guys are making music in Paris. How do we bring them into what we're doing? Or what's happening in Germany? Like, what's the black electronic music in all these places? How do we bring them to Just Jam, So that was my concern. But ultimately, I think I'm just a very ambitious person. And I think my ambition maybe got a little bit too ahead of itself, and then Tim and Barry were also just trying to manage. They both have kids. No, Barry has kids. Tim, obviously is trying to structure his life, and you have this enthusiastic assistant who's trying to tell everybody what to do. So, anyway, move forward to Dailymotion. I was at Dailymotion. I was a content manager, so I got Tim and Barry to use Dailymotion. I encouraged Blaze, the Boiler Room, to use Dailymotion. Techie Latex and Overdrive Infinity was using Dailymotion. I was trying to get Show Studios to use Dailymotion. I got a cartoon network called Federator. I was encouraging them to use Dailymotion and put all their content on there. I was speaking with No Wave in New York to try and get them to start using Dailymotion. Around the time I left, the conversation with No Wave stopped happening. So, but I didn't want to work full time, and then I started making these video clips, and then and through a lot of contacts I met in music, I was very intentional about the artists I work with, mostly independent artists, mostly people who believed in really what it means to collaborate, not just hiring me to do something you want me to do, but how we have a conversation. So people like Blood Orange, people like Nene Cherry, people like Kokoroko, people like Bradley Control, So and then one of the people I managed to bring on the show in Just Jam is an artist called Mika Levi. Mika Levi did all the music for Jonathan. Mika Chu and the Shapes. Mika did all the music for Jonathan Glazer, for a film called Monos, for a film called Jonathan Glazer's films. I forget the names right now, but also the one that won the Academy Award a few years ago. And I was trying to make I made a video for Brother May, who Mika works with, and I was trying to make a music film for all the artists Mika work with. Like a film, it's an individual music video for everyone, but if you put it together, it's a narrative film. And Mika introduced me to a few people, and one of them was the lady who was the top person at the BBC Film. And I didn't know who she was. I emailed. I took my laptop after I finished the shift, and I met this lady, and she was like, "We want to make a feature film with you." I said, "That's impossible." I said, "You white people are crazy. I don't want to be the person who embarrasses my community, so I don't want to do this. Let's make a short film."
That's very wise. That's very wise and not very common.
Yeah, well, I'm the sort of person, I believe I can do it once I see it. That's why I started DJing. I never wanted to be a DJ. In fact, I used to think, I used to have a negative opinion of DJs. Then I started doing it and I understood what it meant to be a DJ. You're not just somebody who plays music. You're someone who champions music. You're someone who creates a space for communities that are making, kids who are making music from their bedroom. You know, you really become an advocate for this. And it gave me a lot of respect for DJs, a lot of respect for the craft, especially people who come from a low-income background. You know, I was very privileged, and it took me a while to understand my privilege. But what I realized in working with Tim and Barry is they were using their privilege to talk about Black electronic music. You know, for right or wrong, however people feel about white people being in the space and that, they were using their platform in that way. So I have to give them a lot of credit. They're really like OGs in the game. So yeah, I did all these things, and because of my relationship with music, I take music very seriously in the clips, in fashion films, and all this. So when I met these ladies, I made this short film. It's called Lizard. It's going to be on the Mubi platform on the 10th of April.
Released in 2020.
2020, yes. We went to Sundance in lockdown. We won the Grand Jury Prize in Sundance, and then the film won a bunch of awards. And we're like, okay, wow. Maybe these ladies are right. Maybe they're not crazy after all. And I think they'd watched a lot of my clips. And they were like, you can make films, you know?
What's interesting to me in cinema or video is the way of storytelling is not to tell things, is to show things. Mm-hmm. And maybe throughout your catalog of music videos, collaboration, they saw that you had a way of storytell that was showing stuff, telling stories through the length of showing, even though, and you talked about your love of music and the importance it has for you, even though for me cinema is the total art in the sense that you told about camera operating, editing, grading. And you told also about your love of telling people what to do. It's about taking in consideration every single aspect.
100%.
Second wise, I would say. It's like from the second you show something, what does it mean? How do I edit it? How do I sound design it? And all of those aspects that you somehow, it was very interesting to have you talk about your background, was built throughout the years, can somehow deploy in cinematography.
100%. 100%. I think when you work with musicians, you know, for good and for bad, you really learn how to be a collaborator. And when you use your own money to make projects, you know, like for a musician, when you mix your own projects and you play your own records in the club, like, you know the value of what's gone into every individual thing. And as for a filmmaker, it's similar. I knew because I was using my savings that I should be using to pay rent, to pay my collaborators, I know that I need something. I need to say something. I don't have the privilege of just making something because I feel like it. Everything has to say something. Everything has to be textured and layered and referenced. And most of my references were trying to talk about what it means to be, maybe before I even knew it, what it means to be a child of the diaspora, how you're trying to develop your own identity, trying to develop a sense of self, a sense of understanding of where you are and the people you're with, and your people's contribution to the global north and the world in a way that isn't trying to force people in a righteous way, but trying to use art as a way to make people think. You know, trying to use art as a way to make people question. You know, you use it as a way to. I love any film, any clip that makes, after you finish watching, you're like, A, how did they do that? Or like, what do you think this means? Like, what did they, you know, for me, that's the favorite one. Any art that like you watch and you're like, okay, yeah, cool, I get it. Like for me, it's like, it's not that interesting. Like it's technically hard as well and really well executed. But I think for me, I think I feel, and I can't speak for everyone, that art has a responsibility to reflect the times, because a lot of the musicians I loved and grew up with, they used art and their music to talk about what was happening in the world under very difficult circumstances, under a lot of like censorship, under a lot of oppression and difficult situations. So if those are my heroes, I'm like, well, if ever I'm in that position, I want to try and be like my heroes, you know, even if it's only a small bit type of thing. So yeah, I mean, yeah, my background completely shaped who I am as a director. I think it really means I'm very, very intentional about everything, every frame, every clip. And like you say, I'm very, very intentional about every person I work with, because I've had loads of collaborations, unfortunately, also with musicians that didn't go so well. You know, that you think you're coming to collaborate and really it's not a real collaboration. It's more like, this is my art, so this is what we're going to do, you know? And I'm grateful for those times, because I think it enables me to really value everyone in a production, really value what they do, and try and maximize our relationship, no matter how small it is, type of thing.
I'm very impressed by the bravery, courage, and integrity that you described when you said that the money that you put aside, you decided to re-inject in your own productions. Whereas as a producer, my main focus is not to use my personal money, but to go get other people's money to create.
Yeah.
But I think also when you put yourself in a zone of danger somehow, like financial risk, it encourage, even force you to take in consideration every single aspect of video music production throughout collaboration, people, how you pay them, how much you pay them, and why you want them on your project.
100%.
And I think people also match that energy when they feel that the risk that you're taking for a bigger project is relies on your shoulders, on your personal shoulders, on how you're gonna pay your rent next week, on how it's like, do you go on holidays? Do you buy clothes? Do you like what is about even the philosophical idea of comfort, of daily comfort? I think that shows tremendous strength and will somehow.
I appreciate you saying that. It's definitely not a sustainable model.
Don't do that at home.
Yeah, don't do that at home. But I think I was very aware, and there's a lot of things I haven't said. So when I was in university, I worked in a call center, for a credit card company, calling people who didn't pay their credit to pay it back. And even then I understood, okay, this is how finance works. Like people are in debt, and these companies, we go and we collect from the people who are in debt. And if they can't pay, you put them in a situation where they're having to constantly pay. So even just this kind of thing makes me understand more about the forces at play. But yeah, I mean, my approach was not super sustainable. But what I think was interesting about this approach is that ultimately it meant everything was a lot more high risk. Everything was a lot more at stake. It means that I have to really think not only about the production, not only about the means of production, not only about the creative, but how that film or that project is going to exist in the world after. So a lot of my work, which I was really lucky because it has references and references and references, meant that my video clips were played in museums, they were played in galleries, they were played in institutional places quite early on. So I make a clip and before you know it, it's playing at the Tate or it's playing at a museum, or I'm being invited to come and talk about the work. I'm invited to do this. And, and maybe I didn't have the vocabulary then, but it showed me that there is an appetite for this kind of conversation and these types of work. And it's something that, I've tried to continue doing throughout work, but yeah.
I'm interested in the fact that most of the references you quote so far are musical references. Yeah. And so that's displaced a bit my first question. We've been talking for 28 minutes, but this is my first question.
Sure.
And it's a bit of an expensive question, but
sure.
I believe it's a part of a young filmmakers' forgery is what is your ideal cinema? Favorite movies, ultimate references, and that can be period, territories, genre. What it's like in terms of cinema? What's your
my
calling?
Favorite?
Yeah.
That's quite easy for me. In terms of cinema, my favorite filmmakers, I have two. I have a lot, but the two who are on like my North Star, Senegalese filmmaker called Ousmane Sembene. Three actually. I'm gonna cheat. Ousmane Sembene for his complete commitment to making work about his community, his complete commitment and kind of militancy towards wanting to make work for the African diaspora and about societal issues in our communities. My number two is an Ethiopian filmmaker called Haile Garima, who's a complete militant. Even more so than his filmmaking, I love the politics of how he thinks about films. He says the camera is a weapon, and whatever you are filming in the fore, mid, and background, as a filmmaker, you have to be very aware, because other people are going to see this work, and the depiction of what's in the fore, mid, and background is going to start affecting, is a reverberation. So imagine if you fire a bullet in the fore, mid, and background, there might be casualties. So you have to be very aware of what you're putting on screen. And then I would say my last favorite filmmaker is a Japanese filmmaker called Kurida. I discovered him through Cannes. Every year I would go and see what won in Cannes and try and watch the films. And I came across a film called Shoplifters, and it was made by Kurida. And I went and watched everything made by Kurida as well, because again, someone who's just dedicated to making films about his community and showing a different side from the stereotype of what you believe is his community. So those are my top three. And then there's maybe another layer. So for more technical, is early Spike Lee. The way his cameraman, Hassan Saeed, would light black skin. More specifically in Crooklyn, and a film called Belly, which was directed by Hype Williams. I think that film is like, for me, the North Star of how you light black skin, because I think it's so beautiful. It's so sensual. It shows how black skin is different hues and different colors, and how a little bit of gloss and oil like bring out the radiance of the skin, and how the highlights come differently, and how you can be really creative about how you lighting situations you put in. And then I'll probably say Alfonso Cuarón, in terms of the use of the camera, also in terms of stories from community. But I think Alfonso Cuarón's camera work has had quite a big impact on me, especially Roma and Children of Men, and how creative he is, and how Mexican cinema has a big believes in magic in the same way African cinema believes in magic. So I would probably say him, and as well. And even
Japanese cinema.
And even Japanese, yeah.
With the reference also to Asian cinema in general, but Japanese cinema to your work.
Yeah.
Even like the first opening scene, the revelation of the father. Yeah. I'm not going to say too much, but there is something about Japanese productions that relate a lot.
100%. But I think it's that thing. I think these cultures believe in magic. I think they very much are invested in mythology, in cosmology, in the details, in the minutiae of things that you can't explain, and the poetry of life in many ways. Those are probably my cinematic references, and the last group is a lot older cinema. There's a lot of musicals. I love musicals. The Sound of Music is one of my favorite films. I grew up on Bollywood films. I grew up on telenovas from Latin America. I didn't know the names because a lot of it was dubbed, I didn't know the real voices of the characters, but I love the songs. I love the stories. And then equally, Jim Henson, who made The Muppets, he made Sesame Street, who made Fraggle Rock, he's up there on my, as my North Star of people I love as well.
It's a 1 hour that's gonna pass us very, very shortly, so I have to go forward. I'm very happy about what you said, and I'm sure there's so much more to say about the cinema tools, but you told about camera work, you talked about lighting, we talked a bit about editing. Yeah. I think those are the framework of good cinema. So if you're a young filmmaker, pay attention to formalism, to techniques. That's my advice, because that's what cinema is a grammar, somehow is a language. Yeah. And those are the verbs, adjectives, transition that allows a sentence to be poetic somehow. 100%. You talked about your love for musicals, and also what we could call destined to child production,
Yes.
so Muppets,
Yeah.
Sesame Street.
Yeah.
What I have to say about your movie is that, as a principle, I don't like movie with kids because they're often used as a tool to bring emotion or comedy very easily. In terms of everybody was a child someday, so we have some universal references. I think somehow it can be a bit lazy most of the time when you just put a camera in the face of a very amazing child, whatsoever his talent would be. And what I felt about your movie is somehow different in the sense that the child, so we have two child actors, Goldwyn Chiemery Egbo as Akinola, which somehow maybe represents a younger you.
Yeah, for sure.
Voilà. And Chibuike Marvelous Egbo as Olaremi, which plays the older brother.
Yeah.
And they are not here for entertainment, but more as gateways to the past, a recollection of special moments seen through their eyes and their height. And in that sense, there is a very, very particular attention to small things and objects, to the wind and other sensation, to eyes looking with strangers that mark a very distinctive moment and an entire day recollection. And so this is my question. What was your approach to casting and directing such young actors, especially when they're supposed to play a part of your life?
That's a great question. I love how you set it up. So with the casting, I'll try and be very succinct. I think we needed to get Shokbe Dirisu first. We needed to know the father first because this is the big piece in the puzzle. And Shokbe, you probably have a question about him, but Dirisu, the lead, he's incredible. He's in Slow Horses, he's in Gangs of London, he's in a film called His House, which is where I saw him in cinema first. But before that, I'd seen him on stage first. So I knew he was an incredible actor, and he auditioned. He was perfect. Beautiful, beautiful human being. I'm going to keep working with him. He's the Michael B. Jordan to my Ryan Coogler, you know? But the boys were... it was a harder task, you know. Asking children to come and work on a production, which is quite high risk, shooting on 16 millimeter.
You're shooting in 16, so not a lot of film available.
Exactly.
And also we have to recall that in European frame, cinema is the only place where children are allowed to, and theater also and music are the place where children are allowed to work.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's like in France, until 16 years old, you're not allowed to work.
Okay.
In cinema, it's the only place where we have child working.
100%. 100%. But these boys had never worked before. It's their first film, you know. So firstly, I went 6 months before to try and look for children in boarding schools and acting groups and churches everywhere. And I thought I found 2 boys. We had loads of casting tapes as well. But also it's like you have to be cognizant. It's like in 6 months' time, they might not look like children anymore. So when it came to prep, we brought those boys back and we brought some other boys back and we did 2-day workshop because a year before I'd done an acting workshop because I really wanted to know what it's like to direct and talk to actors. I always thought like maybe cinema language is like some crazy science. And the person who led that workshop, I really enjoyed it. It was about play. I felt I came out of my comfort zone. And she's great. And she teaches a lot of young black actors in South London. She taught Michael Kaluuya and a whole different range of people. So I was like, we need to bring her to Nigeria to run a workshop. So she came and we did a 2-day workshop with our casting agent, Shaheen Baig, who's from the UK, and our other casting agent, Kemilala, from Nigeria. And we did a first-day workshop. I saw the 2 brothers. We didn't know they were brothers, but they were very tactile with each other and they were helping other kids and they remembered dialogue because their mother's an actor and a scriptwriter. So we cut 10 from 20 and then the second day we had 10 boys left. 2 brothers were there again. We realized they're real brothers and the whole production team was like secretly like excited. I was a lot more cautious because I was maybe favoring boys who've acted before. Because my biggest worry is what happens in week 5 and they don't want to act anymore. We're shooting on film. We can't reshoot again, you know? Like, what happens if we lose them in the production? So I was like, oh, maybe we should pick these other boys because also they're trying to suck up to me as well, you know? But my team were like, you have to pick the brothers. You know, the chemistry between brothers is something you can't fabricate. And they seem to remember the dialogue. So it's up to you to get a performance out of them, you know. So for me, I like strategy. As you've heard my background, a lot of that is strategic. When I was 24, I was like, by the time I'm 25, I want to be doing something I love. In 5 years' time, I want to have made something I'm proud of. In 10 years' time, I want to be in the way of making my first film. In 15 years' time, I want to have made a film and be on the way to making another film. Sometimes I'm behind, sometimes I'm ahead. So I like strategy. My mind is all about strategy, especially if you don't have a conventional route to somewhere. So I realize it's my first film. Everybody's going to be asking me a million questions every day, every second, and it's going to be quite overwhelming. So I'm not going to have a lot of time to spend with the boys. So I insisted that we get them an acting coach, at least for prep. And this acting coach came during prep. He teaches kids on UK TV. He loved coming to Nigeria. Never been before. I think his old partner was Nigerian. He absolutely loved the experience. And he stayed for the first week, and then his understudy came and stayed for the rest, because it was important that these boys learn the craft, that we're not just using them for the film, but they're actually learning technique and learning...
Acting for camera.
Acting for camera is a big difference, you know. So yeah, we had acting coaches, and I promised them we would play. I promised them like these next 5 weeks or 6 weeks is going to be about play. And if they feel we're not playing, they should tell me. So, you know, at times they felt we weren't playing. So I had to sort of think of ways to incentivize them. Offset, we bought them board games. I encouraged the crew to play with them. We had a lot of women on set who were very maternal and nurtured them. I bought them a Polaroid camera so they can remember on set. They can touch the camera. They can look in the diopter. Like, they want to show us their karate moves. Okay, you finish your karate moves, and when you finish, we can start shooting, you know? It's this kind of give and take. My brother behind the scenes promised them an iPad, a bicycle. So these boys have unionized behind my back, you know. But yeah, it also something very big I need to say is if you have people on set who are not invested in your story, in your community, in the stories you're trying to tell, it's going to be a very different experience from working with people who are invested in your community, because they understand the details, they understand how children are supposed to be treated on set. You know, I've had sets where my first short film that won in Sundance, everybody was very invested. Second film was like a sci-fi film, everybody was not invested, and it was a very cold set for children, you know. So again, incredible professionals, but they're not from my community, and they didn't really understand the level of care you need with people's parents, people's family, older generation, younger generation, and it makes a big difference when you're trying to get performances out of people. So again, I say all this to say, and I know it's a longer answer, but also the framework of how I work in Nigeria is very is a process that me and my brother are trying to decolonize. We don't go to Africa thinking it's cheap to shoot there. We realize you have to pay people fairly. You have to pay them over time. You have to treat them with dignity. We realize you can't go to sets and try and do work when you turn up with armed security, with big machine guns, because it creates an us and them. The history of Africa has been a lot about extraction, and even us, the diaspora, were responsible for perpetuating a lot of extraction, going back and working in a particular way. So what we try and do is we work with the local community. You know, I'm not sure your background, but in my background, whenever we go and meet people's families, you have to greet them, you tell them where your family is from, they ask you about your parents. And when you shoot in Lagos, in different parts of Nigeria, you have to do the same thing. You find the leader of that area, the gang leader, the local leader, the political leader, and you have to let them know what they're doing. Sometimes you have to exchange money because it's patronage. We don't do 30-day invoice in Nigeria, we do today invoice in Nigeria. So a lot of that is like having to think of an ecosystem of how you work in that environment. And incentivize and give people equity in what you're doing as well, which enables you have a lot more access, especially when you're bringing children into these environments to work.
You mentioned so many things in that response, and especially you talked about your brother, so who's Wale Davies, yes. Who's a musician, a rapper, a manager,
yes,
and who co-wrote the movie with you also.
Yes.
So when you mentioned it, and also as a mirror of the two boys that you're representing in the movie, I think it's very sensible that to see that the movie is also a familial composition somehow, and that I don't know how much of the autobiographic sense translate into the movie, but the fabrication also respond a bit to that question. And you talked about Lagos a lot and Nigeria, which is not very known in French, even though we have a big industry that co-produce a lot of movies internationally. We don't know much about the importance of cinema and audiovisual production in Nigeria, which is, I believe, the most populated country in the African continent.
Correct, yeah.
Who has a huge production ecosystem, so big that it even has a name. It's called Nollywood.
Yes.
And weirdly, your film was the very first Nigerian movie. It's a British and Nigerian co-production, but it was the first Nigerian movie ever selected in an official selection at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yes.
Which for me is like, I fell off of my chair to see how far it's like, and Cannes is somehow, with Berlin and with Venice, one of the biggest movies.
No, Cannes is the biggest.
Voilà,
Cannes is the World Cup of film
cinema,
festival,
and they've never shown, it's like in Un Certain Regard, out of competition, official competition, never shown a Nigerian movie. It's like that amazed me. And to come back to Lagos, the movie, so you said you shoot throughout 5 weeks?
Yeah, 5 weeks prep, 6 weeks shoot. Yeah.
And the movie, it's like, is held in just one day. So when we see the film, we don't get the extended period you get to live on location, and that you get to meet people. How is Lagos? It's like, it's a period piece because the film is set in 1993.
Yeah.
How is Lagos today? How was it hard to bring back that vintage vibe? What was your purpose in shooting there?
Sure. So yeah, like I said before, it's like trying to pour in and not extract. But Lagos is a city you have to feel. You know, it's and I don't say this because I'm biased and because I'm Nigerian. It's I have a big privilege of a British passport, which means I've been able to travel around the world, certainly with this film, to almost every continent. If not, I haven't been to Antarctica. I don't know if there's a film festival there, and I'm not sure I want to be that cold. But it's unlike any city. It's like, imagine India, imagine Rio, imagine, imagine Montreux, imagine Brixton, imagine Kingston, all put into one city. It's chaos. It's absolute chaos, It's a city that has such a specific type of energy. It's very fast. It's very slow. It's so hard to explain as a city. Sometimes it's super slow. The next minute, the craziest thing is happening. And the energy of Nigerians is just, again, very difficult to explain. But the intention really was because we have not seen, so we speak about the first Nigerian film in official selection in Cannes. Me and my brother, we feel we've never seen authentic representation in film of what it means to be Nigerian. Now, we've seen Nollywood's version of those, like we love them, but it's very specific to Nollywood. It's very specific. But what I'm talking about is authentic representations of Nigeria in the diaspora and in the rest of cinema, especially on a global level. We haven't seen very many, if any, authentic representations. So for us, our priority was to make a film for Nigerians so that when they watch it, they can recognize themselves and they can feel like, oh, yes, this represents us. It's not a caricature. It's not a colonial stereotype. It's not a projection of what it means to be a black man. It's not this sort of negative connotation of what it means to be a black father, a black man, which are all colonial constructs. Most of what people from ethnic or backgrounds from the global South are told about themselves is a complete fabrication. the France, for as great as the country is, and in the rights people have and the protection the cinema has, is all based on the resources allocated and acquired from its colonial exercise. It's the same as the UK. It's the same as what America are trying to do and what America have done, and Spain and Germany and everywhere.
Netherlands and Portugal,
Portugal and Belgium. Exactly.
You name it.
You know, and the story is not complete. You know, the story is not complete. Like, you can't say that these countries are great but not talk about how that greatness is derived. And then people who come from where this greatness is derived, you can't tell them that their places aren't great because that's how your country's been built. So there's half the story is told, the other half is not told. So for us, it's very important that when we're creating work for Africans, we have to start by first giving an authentic representation of who we are, the good and the bad. We're not telling you this character in our film is a perfect father. He's not. He's a man. I don't know a perfect man. Not even the Pope is a perfect man, you know. Everybody has made mistakes. Everybody continues to make mistakes. No matter how progressive, no matter how liberal you think you are, you're going to make mistakes. And it's how you atone for those mistakes that's what's really important. But especially for African fathers, for Nigerian fathers, there's living in the violence of the global north, the daily violence of your body, your image, and then trying to have it, trying to be vulnerable with your children is a difficult exercise, because outside you have to be strong. You have to just keep going. People are going to say terrible things to you. Work is going to be terrible for you. Your circumstances are going to be very difficult, but you continue. Because you want a better life for your children, you know, you want a better existence for your children. And then your children grow up in this place and have a vocabulary of mental health and welfare and care and people from other places. And they're like, my dad is weird, you know, my dad doesn't talk about things. He doesn't tell me he loves me. I'm sure he would, but his whole existence has been, you know, be strong, you know. So our film is just trying to create a mythology of how we can start to have more empathy for our elders, how we have a lot more nuance as to why they've gone through what they've gone through and why they are the way they are, and hopefully an opportunity to start to create a lot more dialogue about vulnerability in a family setting, hopefully to give a little bit more, just more compassion to some of the stories of our elders, and start to trying to create a record of how we can record, film, and archive ourselves, basically.
Alors, the film was shown in the world premiere was Cannes, Un certain regard, where you were awarded mention spéciale de la Caméra d'Or, which celebrates first movies across all selections. So that's an incredible achievement.
Yeah.
Then a few weeks ago, you won the BAFTA, which is the British awards for first outstanding debut. Outstanding debut, so for first feature film.
Yeah.
I believe, and I want to do a quick shout out to Rémi Bonhomme. The film was shown also at the Marrakesh Film Festival.
100%.
So every continent that we've been discussing have been involved.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I have 10 minutes left, so it's the time of sacrifice. I can start with Manare's question, because Manare sent me some question he had for you, and he's not here today. But voilà, he said that you've officially showed the movie in Lagos first. It's like Cannes was first, and then the first public screening was in Lagos.
Yes.
How is Lagos today? Did everything change since the period you show on Image, which is 93 elections? Did things change profoundly, politically, in depth? And how was the movie welcome in your homeland?
So I can start with how the movie was welcome. I think it's an easier subject to tackle. I mean, I think there was probably a lot of cynicism and skepticism when Nigerians hear about a film that's premiered in Cannes and won all these awards. They're like, who is the film for? Is the film for Europeans, or is this the film for us? And when we eventually showed it in Nigeria, it was for 4 weeks, and I think we extended to about 6 weeks, mainly because we hadn't made enough noise about the film, so we were trying to ensure people got to see the film. But also because the response to the film was one of moving from skepticism to one of a lot of emotion. I think people were pleasantly surprised that we made a film for Nigerians. I think people were pleasantly surprised that in the characters they saw themselves. And what also happened is that the film encouraged the younger generation to understand more about their history, because under the military industrial complex, history was not taught in school. So a younger generation are learning about their history for the first time. The older generation are seeing their lived experience be in a film that's of kind of high quality as well. So we start having a lot of generational conversation, people taking their fathers to see the film, having conversations about their father's experiences. So the film has been such a generous exercise and an attempt to start to foster healing in a lot of Nigerian communities. Healing for people whose family fled in the Biafran War, which was very genocidal. People were force-fed and bombed. Similar actions we see today across the world. So again, it's just something that enabled people to feel a lot more and question a lot of things and have more understanding of things. The first part of your question, how is Lagos, how is Nigeria today? In response to things, I think any place's most valuable resource is a human resource, is the people. The people are the most important thing of any place, no matter where you're from. Nigeria has been a place where we've been under military dictatorship for almost 3, 4, 5 decades, and I say this because it really dissipates this act of resistance. It really makes people not want to fight for their country, fight for their experience anymore, because it's always met with violence. Post the independence movement in Africa, your Lumumbas, your Cabrals, your Sankaras, your Abiolas, your Nnamdi Azikiwes, all these leaders, fathers who reflected a positive sense of self-determination, a sense of who we are, going to lead us somewhere, assassinated, killed. So when you see this, we also, masculinity and black masculinity also takes a back seat, because to be a dissenter means you're putting yourself at risk, and actually maybe you should just keep quiet and keep your family safe, So you ask me how Nigeria is today. I think Nigeria is complicated. It's super complicated. I think, again, the people are the salvation. I think the middle class and the upper middle class have a big role to play, because we have a lot of privilege. I think as artists, creating work about working class people is really important, because it kind of humanizes their experience. And I think there's more people who are not middle class and upper middle class. There's more people who are working class and even below working class in Nigeria, in a population of 250 million people, So somebody has to tell their story, and we have a big responsibility as middle class people to get the facts right, to present it as it is, so that we are not, again, painting a caricature of people from a different background. We can make films about going to boarding school and living in Europe and our privileges, because there's struggles within that as well. But I'm interested in salvation of my people, because what that does is it's an outlet where the government isn't providing. It becomes something. Social media is an outlet where the government is providing. People are getting their word out. TikTok and Instagram and stuff like this. So, our music, our film, our arts, our telecommunications is despite the government. People are making it despite the government. So there's a long way to go, a really, really long way to go. And I'm hopeful. I'm an optimist. I don't allow a lot of the negative aspects of what's happening in the world to get me down. And there's a lot of things to get you down. Every time you open your phone, there's a lot of things to get you down. But I think we have to choose to be optimists. I think to be a creative is to be an optimist, because to even get to being a creative is being an optimist. To be on Rinse, for Rinse to even exist here is a dream of Man Ray and everybody who was around at the time to create a space for all the musicians here. Not everybody can make house music. Not everybody wants to make house music. There needs to be another avenue for other people making music, you know. Obviously, house music has done great things for France, you know, but equally there needs to be space because France is not a hegemonic society. It's not a monolith. There's people from so many different backgrounds, and how do you create space for that as well? So I think Nigeria, yeah, it has a long way to go, but hopefully our film, our music can be an introduction that can encourage people to want to know more about Nigeria.
Alors, perfect transition. I'm going to take 5 more minutes and then I'm going to send you back to the taxi because you have to go back to London and I don't want you to miss your train.
I'm actually staying in Paris for a couple more days.
Okay.
So no immediate rush.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You talked about knowledge and emotion. I think the combination of two, a piece that creates knowledge throughout emotion is the core of a great piece of art. So I'm very glad you designed that frame about your own work. And I cannot let you go without talking about the score.
Yes.
Because I think music is one of the most proeminent art to access emotions very easily.
100%.
So, of course, the beautiful score is composed by Duval Timothy and Seiji Mira.
Mira, yes.
Voilà.
Yeah.
I know that... so we talked about your brother, Wally Davies, who's very involved in music industry in different levels.
Yeah.
So I want to know if the musical sound designing experience was thought in the writing already. I know also that you guys put a beautiful live score screening at the Tate Museum recently.
Yes.
And I want to know more about the bit of the process and experience.
Sure.
I'm going to throw everything to you right now, and then we're
So, yes, in the film, there's music, but it's more artists that we put in there, like from the time. You know, there's like Fuji music, more indigenous music put in the film. That was my brother in the writing. The sound design and the score is something, again, with my background that I'm very... intentional about. CJ Mira, who does the sound design, James Ridgway and his team who do the mixing. Very important, very crucial, very underestimated their value in terms of what they do. And CJ co-composing with Duval, you know. Duval had never made music for a film before and CJ has, so CJ really like coached him through it. And yeah, Duval is just a special person. So is CJ, both really special people, and I think they really poured their heart and soul. Duval became a father during the process. My brother also became a father during the process. So a lot of the themes in the film are things that they could relate with and put themselves into in terms of the music in the film. I think music is pretty crucial to everything because it crystallizes emotion. It allows you to see yourself. A lot of people ask me, why didn't you use more typical African music and stuff like this? But I think when you're creating a mythology, you need to encourage people from different perspectives to be engaged in what you're doing. So whenever I think of music or make those choices, I'm trying to think of how you pull more people into an orbit and not just speak to the same people the whole time. I think Duval is really, he's just really a master. He's the most offline person I know. No phone, goes to the library to respond to emails. He's just like chooses.
I know some of them.
Yeah, you know, he's that guy, you know. And Duval is and CJ is he's such a technician. He's such a nerd. Like me and him, like we send each other so many messages about binaural sound, about how you use sound to paint a picture, how you use sound to manipulate, how you use sound to create this constant sense of unease, which is reflected in how children see the world, you know?
It's very, very prominent in the movie that you have this very melodical keyboards that shift
100%.
very easily to a more anxious sound design.
Completely.
And I love a track within a track as a DJ. So I think that works also very impact the viewers.
100%. We spoke about how do you create music that sounds like it could be made by children? How do you create music that has a dynamism that feels like it could be made by children, and then it can, in the same breath, like become something that feels very like decay and rotten? How do you create music that creates a sentiment, a feeling that makes people unsure of what's coming next? and yeah, a lot of the themes in the sound design is talking about decay and rotten fruit, and something that feels bittersweet as well. And how do you balance all this within that? Because I think, I think it's really important. But at the same time, how do you make something that feels optimistic? It feels exciting the first time they're going into Lagos, you know? And how do you also hold space for no music? You know, how do you sort of balance this? When is the right time to use it? And I think that's the beauty of cinema. You know, cinema is the one space. I'm sure there's other spaces, but at least for me, it's the one space that, like, everybody's an artist, you know? And if you can bring the best out of every artist, you have so much dense work at your disposal, you know? And when you're a fan of music, and when you're a fan of image, and when you're a fan of sculpture and design and all these things, like, cinema just becomes such a playground to be able to try things. I should also say, it's my first film, it's my brother's first film, it's Duval's first score, it's the boys' first film, it's my production designer's first film, it's one of my producer's first films. And so many of us running around like headless chickens, not knowing what to do, but we had an experience. We have an editor from Latin America, our editor's Mexican, you know, and our producer, she's from working class family, our other producer's working class family in England. So there's a lot of enthusiasm and different cultures coming together to make a film. You know, we have people across Africa, from Kenya, South Africa, who worked on the film. But a lot of that just means the product of what you're making is so much richer. It's so much denser. It has so much texture in it. And yeah, it's just been the best experience of my life. You know, it's something I would do if someone said, in this minute they lost all the rushes and you have to make the film again. I would go right now and start making the film again. And I really am excited for people who watch this film and feel inspired to tell their own stories. You know, I want to see my father's shadow, a version of my father's shadow from Morocco. I want to see a version of my father's shadow from Guadeloupe, from Martinique, from Haiti. I want to see, because I know what the projection, the idea of these places are, but I want to know what the Amazigh people, I want to know like what the real culture is like, and I want them to write their own stories, and I want us to be in control of that narrative, because I think cinema has allowed me to learn a lot about myself, and has allowed other people to learn about my community from an authentic perspective. And through that is also allowed me to see how similar our backgrounds are in many ways. You know, the textures and the culture is different, but the components of colonization and mysticism and magic and indigenous spirituality is same but different in many ways. So I'm just excited, and I hope, you know, in my BAFTA speech, I told people it's very important to archive, and I hope people use, you know, the tools at their disposal, their mobile phones, to start archiving their family, their parents, their grandparents, all the things, all this, the minutia that feels mundane, but is actually very important, because, you know, if we lose these things, then somebody else is going to tell you who you are and what's important to you. So, yeah, man. I'm just excited, and I'm grateful to you guys, especially you, for your great questions, and Manare and the team at Rinse for giving this opportunity to have a great conversation. It's one of my favorites in the last few days, for sure.
But I want to make a quick moment to thank all of your team, actually, because cinema is a collective work, and you keep mentioning it. So thank you to all of the technicians, all of the actors, producing, distributors. It's like it's a global it's a global project. So thank you for accompanying Akinola Davies to create a very strong mythology, which produce, I think, synesthesia between what you see, what you feel, what you hear.
For sure,
everything is mixed up in a very, very comfortable yet rotten situation. And I think that's the complexity also of narratives, of our new stories, of stories that cross the Atlantic through Chicago, from London to Paris and Nigeria, without forgetting Rio and Guadeloupe. You know, it's a frame that's very interesting to invest. We're very excited at Rinse to have you here, and we We can't wait to see some of your next work.
No problem. The last thing I'll say real quick is thank you and thanks to anybody who listened to this as well. Our film is also a very small film. Le Pack have bigger films, Mubi have bigger films, but the biggest asset for the film is people who watch the film. And the platforms and the ecosystem of like Black and African film platforms like Cinewax, who also put on the film, and people from my network who are also talking about the film. So if people like the film, if people enjoy the film, please talk about it, please share, please play the soundtrack, please encourage your family to see it, please go and see it again, because it makes it easier for the next generation of filmmakers, the next African filmmaker behind. And I think it's important to use these sort of energy and resources that we have to create these same platforms to talk about film and cinema and encourage each other, because really people are the most important thing, and the value we place on the things that are important is what shows the capitalist that there is value in the things that we care about. So thank you again for listening and watching.
And it's a perfect transition to my conclusion, because I want to thank you a billion times for showing up to Rinse France Studio today to present your very first long feature films. My Father's Shadow, en français, Un jour avec mon père, out in every great theaters in France next Wednesday when we're shooting this interview, but it's going to be March 25th. Go see the movie, talk about it with your loved ones, and let's make it one of the big success of the year. Thank you once again to all the helpful people who made that conversation happen, the PAC team and Barrett for recording and broadcasting and this very special show. It's now time to go back to our regular program. So restez verrouillés and see you very soon on screen or in real life. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much.
Rinse.